Hi there, let's talk about how to create a strong thesis, what you should do and what you should not do. So first, what is a strong thesis? A thesis is an assertion or claim about your text that explains some phenomenon within that text. It's going to be your opinion about that text. It will require proof because it won't immediately be obvious. Not everyone is automatically going to agree with your thesis. A strong thesis is also specific. Don't try to write about topics that are so broad they could fill entire books. Make sure your thesis identifies a specific topic of discussion and makes a very particular claim about that topic. A good thesis may also look like a conclusion. Don't be surprised if your thesis looks like a sentence that could be in your conclusion paragraph. In fact, if it does look like that, chances are good you have a good thesis. A strong thesis is also arguable. It will require a logical argument and evidence from the text to prove your claim. Not everyone is going to agree with your thesis, even after it has been logically demonstrated with evidence. A strong thesis can't be purely subjective either. It must be able to be proven logically, and it must be able to point to evidence from the text to demonstrate its validity. So now your instructor or your teacher has given you a text and told you to write something. That can be a little overwhelming. How do you get started? First, get a pad of paper, get a pen or pencil, and start brainstorming about your chosen text. Make a list of noteworthy themes, motifs, symbols, or characterizations that you notice, as many as you can think of. Also, list questions that you think your text might be attempting to answer. For example, some questions you might consider: in what ways does a particular character change or grow throughout a text? Are there two characters or events that provide differing perspectives on an issue? Is one of those perspectives more convincing? And if so, why is it convincing? Does the text challenge a mainstream assumption in any way? What is the assumption and how does the text attempt to challenge it? Is the text successful in its attempt? How about the other themes, motifs, and symbols portrayed in the text that you've been brainstorming? Can you look at any of them and identify a message that the text is presenting? Some sort of message that isn't immediately obvious. Once you've got a bunch of different ideas written down, take one of them and try to work it up into an assertion that you can make about the text, something you can then go on to prove. That's your thesis statement. Once you've got that, then you want to check it against the 6 most common weakness issues that thesis statements can have. Those issues are listed here: the topic sentence, the question format, having vague words or concepts, being true but obvious, being a preview of arguments, or being untenable. That means can't be proven with the evidence in the text. Now I'm going to look at each one of these in some closer detail. So the topic sentence. A topic sentence is a general statement of your intention without making any specific conclusion. For example, you could say, I'm going to write about the role of religion in Oedipus the King. Okay, so here there is a theme from Oedipus the King that's being addressed, but no actual definitive claim is being made about that theme. This is not a sentence you would see in a conclusion paragraph of your essay. The question format is exactly what it sounds like. You've gone and asked the question that you're trying to answer rather than supplying the answer you've decided upon. One great way that you can solve the question format, though, is just to supply that answer, and sometimes that in and of itself will give you a strong thesis. So for example, I have this question here that I've asked: is there a single cause behind Iron Man's humongous ego? I could put a question like this in my introduction paragraph of my essay, but it is not my actual thesis. I would need to then go on in that introduction paragraph and answer my own question. So here, I might say, for example, yes, I think there is a single cause, and I think it's Iron Man's wealth. And so then I would follow up in my introduction paragraph and say, Iron Man's unbridled wealth is the single greatest cause for his humongous ego. This is something that there are many people out there who will absolutely disagree with me, even after I use evidence from the comics and from the films to back up my claim. The next weak thesis issue is the vagueness problem. This is when you have a statement that's not really making any specific claim. It might not even be clear what the particular subject of your essay is. For example, if you said, women are very important to the development of Gilgamesh's character in the Epic of Gilgamesh. This doesn't really tell us why women are important or what, particularly in terms of themes, this essay is going to be talking about. You could solve an issue like this by saying, what about women makes them important in the development of Gilgamesh's character? Something else I want to point out here is what I like to call the danger words. These are words that are very commonly used in students' thesis statements that contribute directly to vagueness problems. Words of import, words like important, interesting, significant. If you've got any of these words in your thesis, then that should be a gigantic red flag to you that you may very well have a problem with vagueness. Same goes if you're using words of comparison. If you're saying two characters are similar, two characters are different, but you're not really saying how they're similar or how they're different. So if you're using any of these words, you do need to bring it a step further and say, why are they important? How are they important? Or why are they similar? And how are they similar? And that'll help you get past this vagueness problem. Number 4 is the true but obvious statement. So this is a claim that you can find evidence in the text to back yourself up, but nobody's really going to disagree with it. It's really something that's closer to just a factual claim about the text. And because of that, it's not going to require any serious intellectual work to prove it in your essay. For example, if you said Bilbo's journey with the dwarves and the Hobbit causes him to grow as a person, nobody is going to read The Hobbit and think that Bilbo's character doesn't change throughout the course of the text. Or if you said Homer Simpson is lazy both as a father and as an employee. Yes, you could write an essay pointing to scenes from The Simpsons that back this up, but again, nobody is ever going to disagree with this. Number 5 is the preview of essay's contents. This is the laundry list thesis. So while it may be worthwhile to provide your reader with a preview of your essay's contents in your overall introduction paragraph, you do still need a specific sentence that is not going to be listing your arguments, but rather is providing more of an umbrella claim about what you're going to be arguing. For example, if I wrote, in order to understand Gilgamesh's development as a king, we must look closely at the roles played by his mother Ninsun, Enkidu, Ishtar, Sidori, Utnapishtim, and Urshanabi. This is a wonderful list of all the different women that are going to be discussed in this essay, but it doesn't actually provide any concrete explanation of what we're going to conclude by looking at all of these women, what we're going to discover by looking at all of these women. And the 6th and final issue with having a weak thesis is if you have the untenable thesis, the unprovable thesis. So in designing a claim that requires proof and is not obvious, you can go too far in the other direction and make a claim that's impossible to defend because it's not supported by the evidence in the text. The two most common ways that this tends to occur is thesis statements that are suggesting author's intent, or that are suggesting the expected reaction of an audience or readership. So for example, if I have this thesis, the return to the city walls at the end of Gilgamesh's journey tells us that he is the same at the end of the story as he was at the beginning. Otherwise, the poet would not bother to repeat the description of the walls and the instructions to the audience to inspect them. This part that talks about the poet would not bother. We have no idea what the poet had in mind when he or she was writing Gilgamesh. We don't even know who the poet was. So this could never be proven from the text of Gilgamesh itself. So again, let me run through this checklist. You want to keep these 6 potential issues for your thesis statement on your desk and compare them against your thesis before you go on into your next steps of researching and writing. So the topic sentence, the question format, vague words and concepts, true but obvious statements, previews of your arguments, or anything that is untenable or unprovable. These are all aspects that you want to avoid like the plague when you are writing your thesis. Now I'm going to run through a few examples and just talk about which of the 6 examples of weak theses are going on here in these examples. So Chaucer's The Wife of Bath's prologue and tale has a lot of interesting things to say about the institution of marriage. There are 2 different sections in this thesis statement that are problematic, and both of them fall under the issue of being vague. So first, we have the danger word interesting. A lot of interesting things to say. Well, what specific interesting things is this tale saying? Also, this phrase, the institution of marriage, is a fairly broad topic. It might be worth considering a more narrow aspect of marriage. For example, fidelity. Another thesis statement: are the themes of duty and gratitude as important in Disney's Beauty and the Beast as they were in Villeneuve's original version of the fairy tale? So hopefully that question mark at the end of this thesis statement tells you immediately what the problem here is. This is a question format. But this is a really easy one to fix because the answer to this question can then provide a strong thesis statement. The themes of duty and gratitude are held to be higher values in Villeneuve's original Beauty and the Beast than in Disney's later reworking of the fairy tale. Next thesis example. In the course of my analysis, I will demonstrate that there are lots of problems with John the Carpenter's marriage to Allison, that John himself has many faults, and that the tale sheds a pessimistic light on the institution of marriage. This is the preview of arguments. So to move this into a stronger thesis, you should seek to find the main point that you can take away from these arguments. What is the single final conclusion that can be gotten by looking at all of these various points? Next, Chaucer's Wife of Bath shows such self-confidence in her prologue to the tale that we can conclude that she is Chaucer's vision of what all women should aspire to be. This is the untenable, unprovable thesis. So Chaucer's vision, the author's intent. We have no idea what Chaucer's vision is. All we can argue is what we see in the text when we read it. Capable of being used for both good and evil, the human arts and sciences play a significant role in Marlowe's Faustus and Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound. I actually have a personal soft spot for this example of a weak thesis. It is extremely vague in numerous places. So first, and perhaps most obviously, is our danger word significant. It's playing a significant role. So how is a significant role being played? What exactly is going on there that's worth noting and calling it significant? But even then, even if we get rid of that danger word, the broad topics being dealt with here can fill multiple books. First of all, capable of being used for both good and evil. Well, both good and evil, we might as well write capable of being used for everything ever. That's as broad as it gets. Also, the human arts and sciences. So pretty much you're saying all of human knowledge ever is important in these books. Again, this is about as vague as it gets. How about this one? I am going to discuss how Bilbo's journey in The Hobbit turns him into a hero. Hopefully you identify almost immediately that you would never see a sentence like this in a conclusion paragraph. So it is the topic sentence. Instead, you would want to think about what is it about Bilbo's journey that turns him into a hero? And the answer to that question could potentially lead to a strong thesis. Dr. Moreau is the hero of the novel with whom a reader can eventually come to identify despite any initial discomfort with him. This is also an untenable thesis, but instead of it being author's intent, now our problem is readership reaction. This thesis is suggesting that the reader will identify with Dr. Moreau. There is no way you could ever prove this using the evidence in the novel itself. We can never assume how various people out in the world are going to react to a text. And then I'll end on a strong thesis statement example before we wrap this up. Little Red Riding Hood is not a simple warning tale about disobeying one's parents. In actuality, the Grimm brothers' full version of the fairy tale serves as a celebration of the strength that can emerge after a traumatic experience. It is not a topic sentence because we could imagine seeing this sentence in a conclusion paragraph. It is not in question format. It is not vague. It's avoiding all of our danger words, and the topic that it's dealing with is a very narrow, concrete topic. It is not true but obvious. There are plenty of people out there who will disagree with this statement, who will think that Little Red Riding Hood is just about a warning tale, even after I were to go on and prove it with evidence from the text. It is provable with evidence from the text, so it is not untenable. And finally, it is not a laundry list of my arguments. It is a broader umbrella statement of what my essay is going to be discussing. So here, this is an example of a thesis that passes that checklist of the 6 major dangers. So now it is time for you to fly from the nest and go write your own thesis statement. Good luck and have fun doing it.